Jon Jones has never turned down an opponent here or been afraid to fight anybody.
So if, for instance, he doesn't fight this guy, who would you like to see him fight? Or are you going to wait until he fights this guy?
I don't know. We'll see how this thing plays out over the next couple weeks. But yeah, if we can't get this fight done, we'll move on quickly.
I was going to say, Dana, my last thought on that. How long are you going to wait? I mean, how long is it worth waiting for?
I said a couple weeks.
Couple weeks?
Yeah, we'll have answers in the next couple weeks.
We'll move on. That's not just a threat. It's a line in the sand from UFC President Dana White. And if Jon Jones doesn't act fast, he might just be erased from the biggest heavyweight fight in UFC history. That's right. After nearly 2 years of hype, teases, injuries, and endless social media drama, the dream fight between Jon Bones Jones and interim champ Tom Aspinall might be dead before it ever becomes real.
The only time that anything remotely weird has ever happened with Jon Jones was the time that his in camp did the weird Chael Sonnen thing. We can't fight Chael Sonnen on short notice. Other than that, and that wasn't him, it was his team, and he listened to his team for whatever reason. But that's like the goofiest fucking move in the history of the UFC. Just to talk about that too, when you talk about Jon Jones at that time when that happened, that's the other thing about this sport right now. Not only the fighters are they willing to step up, but the coaches. You know, a lot of these guys go to their coaches and their coaching staff and say, you know, we're being offered this fight on short notice. Jon Jones coaches told him not to do it.
In what may be the most brutal and public ultimatum Dana White has ever made toward a UFC legend, the UFC boss has now set a firm deadline for Jones to finally agree to the long-anticipated title unification bout. If the deal isn't done in the next couple of weeks, the UFC will officially move on, and Jon Jones could be stripped, sidelined, or worse, replaced as the face of the heavyweight division.
Jon Jones should be stripped of the title, to be honest.
What are the UFC saying?
Well,
what do we know?
I've not heard nothing from the UFC. I think Jon Jones should be stripped of the title, to be honest, because everyone else does when they get injured like that. I don't see why he's still got it. I don't understand that. I think I should be the real champion right now. And it's hard to say without sounding rude, but who's asked about Jon Jones and Stipe anymore? Like, what? Why do we get this legacy fight and they get to live by their own rules? What's a legacy fight? What's a retirement fight for a title? That's not... I want to fight Stipe and then I want to fight Jon Jones is what I want to do, to answer your question. I think all this other stuff's a load of rubbish. Stop protecting him now. Stop protecting your boy at the top there, Jon Jones. If he's injured, get out of the way. I'll fight.
Let's break it all down. From Dana's warning to Aspinall's frustration to why this could be the final chapter in Jon Jones. It all started back in 2023 when Tom Aspinall sent shockwaves through the heavyweight division by knocking out Sergey Pavlovich in under 2 minutes at UFC 295, capturing the interim belt in explosive fashion. Aspinall wasn't just fighting for gold, he was fighting for respect. Fans saw a new, hungry champion rising from the UK and they wanted one thing, a showdown with the GOAT, Jon. But instead of unifying the belts, Jon Jones chose to fight Stipe Miocic, a legend in his own right but a fighter coming off a long layoff. Jones defeated Miocic, sure, but fans felt robbed. The real test was Aspinall. And now, 20 months later, they're still waiting.
How long does Tom sit and wait? How many times do you get to tell Tom, who's a prospect, who has a shelf life of about 10 years, and who, by the way, has a belt that says he's the champion? How long do you tell him the only time he gets to seek gainful employment is when Jon Jones decides he's ready to let Tom go to work? Like, even if Aspinall says, I'm ready to move on, I'm ready to move into surreal, I guess. Can't I have surreal and we book Jon? See where the longevity that is Tom waiting on Jon, do you see where that starts to grow? And when there's less and less manipulation that can be done to make it change.
And that patience, it's running out fast, especially for the UFC brass. In a fiery new interview on the Jim Rome Show, Dana White made his feelings crystal clear. We'll see how this thing plays out over the next couple weeks. If we can't get this fight done, we'll move on quickly.
What I'm about to ask you, you're not going to say is the beauty of what we do, because I know you're sick of the question. Does Jon Jones not want to fight, or does Jon Jones just not want to fight Tom Aspinall?
Listen, Jon Jones has been an interesting human being to deal with since the day he got here. But I will say this about him. You would never hear me out, talking about he's the GOAT and he's the this and he's the that if Jon Jones didn't want to fight people. Jon Jones has never, ever said, I'm afraid to fight this guy, or I don't like this fight for me, or any of that stuff.
So if, for instance, he doesn't fight this guy, who would you like to see him fight? Or are you going to wait until he fights this guy?
I don't know. We'll see how this thing plays out over the next couple weeks. But yeah, if we can't get this fight done, we'll move on quickly.
That wasn't a suggestion. That wasn't a maybe. That was a deadline. And if you know Dana White, you know he doesn't bluff. The UFC has International Fight Week coming up, with UFC 317 on June 28 in Las Vegas. If Jones isn't signed and sealed by then, the UFC isn't waiting. And here's the real twist. Tom Aspinall already has a date and location for a fight. Whether it's against Jones or someone else, he's stepping into the octagon again soon. The UFC is preparing to move forward with or without Jon Jones. That's how serious this has gotten.
Doesn't really matter about Jon Jones.
Would you be content with your career if that fight didn't happen?
Ultimately, I wanted to be the heavyweight champion of the world. I'm not letting Jon hold me back. Like, if we cross paths, I'll try my best to take him out.
Now let's talk about Tom Aspinall, the man who's been stuck in UFC limbo for over a year. Aspinall isn't just the interim champ. He's become the longest reigning interim champion in UFC history, a record that no one wants to have. His last fight was in July 2024, where he demolished Curtis Blaydes in the first round. Since then, he's begged for a fight with Jones, kept himself in shape, done interviews, stayed professional, but his career has been stalled. Even other UFC champions are speaking out. Flyweight king Alexandre Pantoja recently blasted Jon Jones for delaying Aspinall's career, and Aspinall himself has called Jones retired, saying it's time to crown a real, undisputed heavyweight champ.
When you're the champion, I don't think you have a choice.
What are your thoughts there with Jon and Tom?
If you're the champion, defend your belt. It's a responsibility. I know your resume is incredible. What you've done is incredible. You're considered the greatest of all time. Yeah, we get that. So if you don't want to fight, just retire. You're done. I don't want to throw shade at him. He's done great things, but when you're the champion, I don't think you have a choice. When you've got an interim champ, just standing there waiting for how long?
This isn't just about legacy anymore. It's about respect, and it's about moving the division forward. Meanwhile, Jon Jones remains the wild card in this entire equation. Let's be clear, Jon Jones, Scared Jones, is one of the greatest fighters to ever step into the octagon. He's the most dominant light heavyweight in history, and his move to heavyweight was supposed to be the final chapter in an already legendary story. But since 2020, he's only fought twice, once against Cyril Gane for the vacant title and once against Miocic. That's it. Jones has hinted at retirement, comebacks, and legacy fights in cryptic tweets. He's claimed he and Aspinall agreed to let the UFC announce everything, but fans aren't buying it. They see a fighter who's not acting like a champion. They see a fighter holding up the entire division. And for a guy who's built his name on fighting anyone, anywhere, anytime, the silence is deafening. Dana White has defended Jones, saying, "You would never hear me talking about he's the GOAT if Jon Jones didn't want to fight people. He's never said, I don't like this fight, or I'm afraid of this guy. Not once."
Obviously, this Jon Jones thing is what a lot of people are talking about. I wonder, is there anything that PFL or Francis could do to make that a realistic option for you guys, or are you fully focused on Aspinall?
Yeah, it's Aspinall's fight. I mean, we've been talking to this kid forever about it, and it's his fight. Listen, you can't make people fight. If Jon doesn't want to fight, can't make him fight. We can try to make him fight. We can throw things at him that inspire him to want to fight, but we'll figure it out.
But the fans aren't asking whether Jones is afraid. They're asking if he's still hungry. And that question, that hesitation, might be enough for the UFC to strip his belt and move on. Let's not forget the last time something like this happened. Back in 2012, Jon Jones was scheduled to fight Dan Henderson, but Henderson pulled out late. The UFC offered Chael Sonnen on short notice, but Jones turned it down after his coach advised against it. That decision led to the first and only event cancellation in UFC history.
The only time that anything remotely weird has ever happened with Jon Jones was the time that his in camp did the weird Chael Sonnen thing. We can't fight Chael Sonnen on short notice. Other than that, and that wasn't him, it was his team, and he listened to his team for whatever reason. But that's like the goofiest fucking move in the history of the UFC. Just to talk about that too, when you talk about Jon Jones at that time when that happened, that's the other thing about this sport right now. Not only the fighters are they willing to step up, but the coaches. You know, a lot of these guys go to their coaches and their coaching staff and say, you know, we're being offered this fight on short notice. Jon Jones coaches told him not to do it.
Now, history could be repeating itself, but this time it might cost him the biggest fight of his career. If the UFC moves forward without Jones, Tom Aspinall could face a top contender like Sergey Pavlovich, Jailton Almeida, or Curtis Blaydes for the undisputed heavyweight championship. And that would be the final confirmation that Jon Jones is out of the picture, not just as champion, but as an active fighter. So what happens next? The UFC's message is simple. Time's up. If Jon Jones doesn't commit to the fight with Tom Aspinall in the next 2 weeks, the biggest heavyweight bout in MMA history dies on the table. The GOAT might walk away, and a new era, the Aspinall era, could begin.
Guys, I have never seen a fight that we've wanted that we've then been denied. No different than the girl at school that you're chasing and she's telling you no. Lose steam. This fight is a smaller fight now than it was 3 months ago. Aspinall versus Jones, which, by the way, I don't maintain for that it could be resurrected one press conference or one Instagram live by Dana. I'm just sharing for you right now. Jones and Aspinall was not only hotter 3 months ago, it was hotter than that 5 months ago. And it is coming to an almost crawl.
Will Jon Jones sign the contract and silence the doubters? Will the UFC pull the trigger and move on without him? Or will this all end with Dana White stripping the title and crowning a new undisputed king? One thing's for sure, this fight drama is far from over. If you think Jon Jones is ducking Tom Aspinall, hit that like button. If you think he's just playing the game smart, drop a comment and let us know. And don't forget to subscribe and hit that bell, because when the UFC drops the final word, we'll be here to break it all down. This is the fight the world wants, but time is running out.
Everybody reaches a sell-by date, don't they? Everybody's got a time limit. He's reached it, and we move on.
I reckon anyone else in that position would have been stripped. I was talking to Adam Cattell about it the other week.
Yeah, seen it.
He should be stripped now.
It obviously was a bit annoying at the time, but it's all in the past now. We're moving forward. Everything's good. We can get fighting again, and I just want to get fighting, mate. Do you know what I mean?
Must be fucking sick of getting asked about that, you know.
It's not the best. You know what? It's better now because I do know what's going on a little bit, and I am going to fight soon, so that's nice. But for like the last kind of 6 months, I've just not known what's going on. Do you know what the worst bit is? Is like, you know this yourself. It's like money, fame, titles, rankings, all that aside, I just love fighting.
Yeah, exactly.
I just like fighting people. That's what I got into it for. I didn't get into it for anything else. All the other stuff is just like nice to have on top. I want to be the best fighter I can be. I love it. I'm in the gym every day. I just want to fight. That's been taken away from me for like nearly a year now. And that's got nothing to do with me, which is, it's a bit frustrating to be honest, but we are nearly over it now, which is good.
Tom Aspinall has just sent a crystal clear warning message to Jon Jones, and it's not what you'd expect from the usually reserved British champion. In a recent candid interview with fellow UFC star Paddy Pimblett, Aspinall dropped some bombshell revelations about the Jon Jones situation, his future plans, and why he believes the heavyweight division has been held hostage for far too long.
Didn't think they'd make Islam vacate. But if you're making Islam vacate, Jones needs to be stripped. You know what I mean? If you're making Islam vacate after 4 defences, fighting people on short notice, you should let him try and be double champ.
We're also diving deep into Paddy Pimblett's explosive comments about Jones, Dana White's latest statements on the heavyweight unification saga, and what this all means for the future of the division. Stick around because this story has more twists than a Jon Jones fight contract negotiation. Let's start with the headline that's got everyone talking. Tom Aspinall, the interim heavyweight champion who's been waiting 577 days for his shot at undisputed gold, has finally had enough of the Jon Jones circus. In a training session video with Paddy Pimblett, Aspinall delivered what can only be described as a warning shot to Jones. But here's the thing. It wasn't delivered with anger or frustration. Instead, Aspinall's message was cold, calculated, and perhaps more devastating because of its matter-of-fact delivery.
Best life, mate, in Thailand. So everybody reaches a sell-by date, don't they? Everybody's got a time limit. He's reached it, and we move on.
Everybody reaches their sell-by date, don't they? Everybody's got a time limit. He's reached it, and we move on. That's not just trash talk, folks. That's a man who's moved past caring about Jon Jones and is ready to claim what he believes is rightfully his. Aspinall continued by saying the situation is now in the past and he's excited to fight again. But the most revealing part? Aspinall confirmed he's going to fight soon, and it sounds like it won't be against Jones. This suggests the UFC is finally ready to move forward without their most problematic champion.
Dana White says I'm his man. We love that. I'm going to go and prove that pretty soon. So it's coming.
If Aspinall's comments were a surgical strike, Paddy Pimblett's were a full-scale assault. The Liverpool lightweight didn't hold back when discussing Jon Jones during their training session. Pimblett started by declaring Aspinall as the best heavyweight in the world, especially the best active heavyweight in the world, a not-so-subtle dig at Jones's inactivity. But he didn't stop there. I reckon anyone else in that position would have been stripped. He should be stripped now. This is significant because it's coming from one of the UFC's biggest current stars. Pimblett has a massive following and isn't known for creating unnecessary controversy. When he speaks out like this, people listen. But perhaps most damning was Pimblett's assessment of Jones's impact on the sport. The fact he's not stepping up and fighting you, he's let the whole MMA fan base down. And it's even more in that case when you're the reigning heavyweight champion of the world and you've got someone holding interim.
The fact he's not stepping up and fighting, yet he's let the whole MMA fan base down.
I couldn't have somebody else saying that they're going to beat me and not at least fight them. And then if I lose, at least I tried my best.
And it's even more in that case when you're the reigning heavyweight champion of the world and you've got someone holding...
It is crazy.
Heavyweight
it is a crazy situation, but there's a lot of politics in there in the UFC at the top levels, and it's just like out of my hands, so there's nothing I can really...
This isn't just criticism from a fellow fighter. This is a public indictment of Jones's behavior from someone who represents the voice of the fans. Now, here's where things get really interesting. UFC President Dana White made some revealing comments after UFC 316 that might have exposed more than he intended. White confirmed that Jon Jones did initially agree to fight Tom Aspinall, stating, Jon Jones agreed to do the fight. Jon Jones was offered the deal and accepted the deal.
To clarify, you said that Jon agreed to fight Tom, yes?
Jon agreed to fight Tom?
Is that what you just said there? Before, like on the last answer, you said...
Jon agreed to fight Tom, yes.
So but he hasn't signed a contract, right?
Right. Yeah. So I mean, you guys have heard me for the last however long. I said, I guarantee you this fight's going to happen. This fight's going to happen. Fight's going to happen. You guys told me the crazy shit that was going on Instagram and all these other places. But yes, I've been saying Jon is going to fight Tom.
So there's some rumors out there that you guys had offered him his fuck you money and he turned it down.
Unless you hear it come from here or we put out a press release, don't believe any of this bullshit. But yes, Jon agreed to fight Tom. Fact.
But here's the kicker. White also compared Jones to Anderson Silva in terms of how difficult he is to negotiate with. That's not exactly a compliment when you consider Silva's later career controversy. Multiple reports now suggest that Jones accepted the fight verbally, but has since gone back on his word, admitting to the UFC that he's no longer interested in fighting Aspinall. Instead, rumors are swirling that Jones is eyeing a lucrative bout with Francis Ngannou.
It was kind of crazy how much interest Jon showed in the Francis Ngannou fight. Like, there was some tweets going back and forth. What would happen if he came to you and says, like, I'll fight, but I won't fight Aspinall, I would fight Ngannou? Would you even be interested in that or no?
I don't have Ngannou on her contract, and Aspinall's the guy.
Right. If you were put in the position, would you maybe try to get Ngannou back under contract or no?
Probably not.
This creates a massive problem for the UFC. How do you handle a champion who won't fight the #1 contender, but is willing to fight for bigger paydays elsewhere? It's a situation that's never been handled well in combat sports history. Tom Aspinall gave us rare insight into the behind-the-scenes politics that have kept him in limbo for nearly a year. In his conversation with Pimblett, Aspinall revealed his frustration with the situation. Money, fame, ranking, titles. I just like fighting. That's what I got into MMA for. That's been taken away from me for nearly a year now, and it's got nothing to do with me, which is a bit frustrating, to be honest.
But for like the last kind of 6 months, I've just not known what's going on. Do you know what the worst bit is like, you know this yourself, it's like money, fame, titles, rankings, all that aside, I just love fighting.
Yeah, exactly.
I just like fighting people. That's what I got into it for. I didn't get into it for anything else. All the other stuff is just like nice to have on top. I want to be the best fighter I can be. I love it. I'm in the gym every day. I just want to fight. That's been taken away from me for like nearly a year now, and that's got nothing to do with me, which is, it's a bit frustrating.
This highlights a fundamental problem in modern MMA, when politics and money supersede competition and merit. Aspinall has been the interim champion for over 18 months, has defended his title, and has been actively